Francisco d'Ancona.
We know you.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Face to Face with me, Azad Ali. And this week, alhamdulillah, I'm honored to have in the studio Imam Shakeel Begg from Lewisham Islamic Centre. And we're going to talk about the role of mosques, masajid, in the UK in particular. Now, mosques, there seems to be a constant discussions about what are mosques doing. Are they allowing women in? Are they doing this? Are they allowing other kind of talks coming in? Are they relevant? Do they speak the right language? There's so many different discussions and everything else. So before we get into the challenges, I think it'd be nice for our audience to actually understand traditionally what is the purpose of a mosque. What is it supposed to do?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you to Azad Ali for hosting me and Eman Channel for giving me this opportunity. I think in terms of your question and query, there's a simple formula and answer that I would have, and that is going back to the masjid or the mosque of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And if we see in terms of the function of his masjid and how he kind of like, catered for the community, many of the answers that we are seeking is there. So as we mentioned, women. Did women come into the mosque in the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him? Non-Muslims. Did non-Muslims come to the mosque in the time of the Prophet, peace upon him? Were youngsters and youth involved in mosque issues, mosque affairs, running of the masjid and taking, having a presence inside the mosque? So you would find the answer is there. And if we look at a general function, I could say, and I mentioned that in my local community, the mosque should be the heartbeat of your local community, serving the needs of the Muslims, but serving the needs of all non-Muslims alike. So that in summary. Okay,
so a lot of people and a lot of masajids that have been opened up, in particular in the UK, the classical understanding, not necessarily classical Islamic understanding, the traditional understanding has been that it's a place of worship. That we need to pray in congregation, and the mosque helps fulfill that function, and that's it.
Yes, I mean, look, I don't want to be too negative. When Muslims came to the UK, let's say 60, 70 years ago, the main focus then was, let's say, having Friday facilities, Jummah facilities, and then maybe the daily prayers and so on. So I don't want to mention anything negative about that, but at the same time, that was not the understanding of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the running of his masjid. And if we as Muslims are saying, look, he's our role model, he's our guide, his masjid, should be the role model for us in terms of how we run masajid, then surely we will be able to say, look, the way they have been functioning, the masajid or the mosques have not been done in the correct and proper way.
Okay, so maybe the need was very different then, because a lot of the Muslims that did come over like 60, 70 years ago, they were economic migrants. They weren't here to build a life. They didn't actually even have families here. And the time has changed now. So in your kind of experience, in Lewisham, mashallah, the Islamic Centre is very well known and it's doing a lot of good work. In your kind of dealings with other institutions, masajid and imams, and maybe committees and everything else, what do you see as the biggest hurdle for them fulfilling the prophetic model? What do you see? It doesn't have to be one, maybe. What are the biggest hurdles in your mind?
I would say, let's say one as an example, not making the masjid fit for purpose, not making the mosque or the masjid being a center of the community. And that I worry and I feel is basically sometimes people come with cultural understandings to Islam, that a mosque maybe in their country where they came from was just a prayer place. So, bringing it from there to here, it needs to function in the same way.
Right.
And another challenge, and I say which has kind of like had a very negative impact in our kind of like communities, maybe not just the masjid itself, but let's say Muslims, is the issue of language. So how many Muslims are able to, for example, accommodate, facilitate non-Muslims by the ability of speaking the English language. And of course, same would apply to the masajid, the mosques. If the lectures are not in English, if the khutbah is not in English, not only are you isolating young British-born Muslims from the society, you will not be able to accommodate the wider non-Muslim community that we live amongst. So that again is a big, big challenge. And remember, you know, the verse of the Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُم. We never sent any messenger except with the language of his people to explain to them. You know, it's a prophetic kind of like teaching model.
Okay, so I mean, let's pick on the cultural obstacle that you brought in. I would say now that we've been here for this long, we're into the second, third generation of Muslims. The culture is fading away, it seems, but there seems to be still obstacles. So we still hear every now and again on social media that, you know, someone went to a mosque and they couldn't pray because, you know, they don't have women facilities. So, you know, is it really just a cultural thing, or is there an element of education or understanding that is within the traditions of the different schools in Islam that says, you know, there isn't a place for women in the masjid?
I would say a lot is to do with the cultural understanding and the cultural issue. And if there might be a religious, you could say, spin or understanding to it or interpretation, but that interpretation and context was for a certain environment, for a certain time period. Again, maybe more relevant, maybe, I would personally disagree with it too, but maybe more relevant to a certain Muslim country, a certain Muslim environment. That definitely is not applicable in our time, in our society. In terms of...
Well, the prophetic model, if we go back to that, was there women allowed to pray there?
Yeah, of course.
So then how do we then come about with another interpretation?
I mean, a clear wording of Prophet Muhammad. It's a hadith, peace be upon him, where he said, do not prohibit your women from coming, the female slaves of Allah, from coming to the houses from the masajid of Allah. Clear statement to say, look, don't stop them. So how can we then later on in history come and say, look, they should be prevented? So I think that's clear cut. But also I think it's important in terms of, while one culture goes away, another culture comes. And that culture also might be alien to our British context of Islam and so on. Meaning, let's say, look, the Asian culture goes away, but then another interpretation comes, which is a Saudi interpretation. And again, it also isolates communities, youngsters, non-Muslims, from another perspective. It's still cultural. It might not be from this part of the Muslim world, but it's from another part of the Muslim world. We need to ask and say to ourselves, where's the context of us being Muslims, practicing our deen and Islam, but in the environment and context that we're in?
Okay. I think that, I mean, a great deal of masajid do actually now provide spaces and actually to have been for a long time. And I don't want to just get stuck onto this issue, but what follows from that is, okay, so, you know, you're allowing female participation in salah and everything else, that's really good. But in actually the functioning, so you said it needs to be the heartbeat of the community. So how can a mosque or an institution, and maybe your experience at your centre, you know, achieve something like that when, for example, in its running, its governance, it doesn't have the heart of the community, or it doesn't resemble the community it's trying to serve?
Yeah. So I think in terms of, as an example, Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, let's take an example of the youth. You have the example of Osama bin Zayd. You have the example of Abdullah bin Abbas. In fact, you have examples of his wives, al-Mu'mineen Aisha, al-Mu'mineen Hafsa. Were they not, in their own context, leaders within society and within the masjid? Now, if that could have taken place, and it did in the time of Prophet Muhammad, why can't we also have that same principle, value, structure, you know, mode of operation within our communities, within our masajid? Why can't youngsters lead the prayers? Why can't youngsters run projects? Why can't youngsters be part of, let's say, governance, or sisters or women and so on?
Well, I mean, you're asking the question. We're asking the question as well.
Yeah.
And we see time and time again that there is actually a disconnect. Now, language is something you've mentioned. Why do you think that we have so many madaris, so many places where imams are being produced, if you like, qualified imams are coming out in this country, in the UK. However, majority of the khutbah that is given in the mosques is in a different language.
Yeah. One way of looking at it could be that you blame the youngsters, you blame the sisters, the women, you blame society. But I think the blame lies more on leadership. Yeah, be that leadership trustees, management committees, be that leadership imams. That have we facilitated these community members to be part of our structure, part of our communities, part of our masajid? And to me, maybe the answer lies in that in reality, we haven't. We've set up barriers, we've kind of like, what's the term, coveted leadership and held on to it and not given opportunities to others who maybe can do a better job than us.
Yeah, no, there are definitely a lot of opportunities. We are actually coming to the end of this part, and so we'll just take a short break, inshallah. But I do want to carry on with this discussion about the language, because I think you've mentioned, there is responsibility with the youngsters and the people themselves maybe not coming forward, but also on the other side, the leadership maybe not given the opportunity. And I want to explore that a little bit. So inshallah, after the break, do join me where we will be discussing this. See you in a bit. Assalamu alaikum. Has joined us. And just before the break, we were talking about language. Now, I'm quite interested in understanding, you said the responsibility lies with young people, with women and everything else. What do you mean by that? What could they do?
In terms of, they need to also show themselves to be part of society and part of masajid. It's not like, okay, we're not being...
But how, Sheikh? Because the reason I asked this is, I personally know of a lot of young qualified ulama who find it very difficult to find a job. They're not given an opportunity. And there seems to be a trend in finding a perfect imam, who's got years of experience and he needs to be of certain age and everything else. Youngsters, there seems to be, young people shouldn't really lead the salah. It should be someone a little bit senior. We have this problem. So it's not really the young people's fault, is it?
Yeah. So I think, look, you have highlighted some very, very important points, which I think in our short discussion today, we will probably not be able to tackle those issues. But there's a wider big problem within the Muslim community that, young imams, let's say, are not given opportunities. And even if they are lacking in skills, where's the training? Where's the mentoring? Where's the kind of like facilities, the services to kind of like give them that leadership and training so they can lead their communities?
Yeah.
And sometimes, going back to the initial issue that we discussed, the cultural side. People sometimes see as an imam only to lead the prayers. Yeah, so if somebody else is leading the prayers, fine. Why do you want another young imam who speaks English? The khutbah is 5 minutes in Arabic or in Urdu, Bangla. So why do you need another young imam who might demand a higher salary, which we really don't want to give, because our purpose and service for the community is very, very limited. That mindset needs to change.
Okay, so it's only going to, it's almost like a vicious circle. We're looking for the change, but it seems, a lot of people are saying, well, the leadership, they inshallah are going to move on and we'll get new leadership. We've had many, there's a report that there's over 2,000 mosques in this country. Majority of them, I'm sure, are providing spaces for women and everything else. But I would say almost entirely, at least 95%, if not 99.9% of them are led by older, in particular, men. Now, I understand, we need to change the language and everything else. But if the management of an institution isn't reflective of the society, number one, and number two, isn't of the background where they would see that language is actually a very important thing, then these changes won't happen, will they?
I think number one, there needs to be that dialogue and discussion. That even these, let's say, older men who might be trustees, and it's not to say put them in
no, I'm not being negative.
A bad picture.
I'm not being negative. I'm just stating that this is the case, and the change isn't happening. You know, the languages haven't changed. You know, young people. So you know, one of the things I do want to bring the conversation onto, like you said, it needs to be the heart of the community. Now, in that community, maybe the biggest problem is knife crimes. Maybe the biggest problem is drugs. Maybe the biggest problem is unemployment. Maybe the biggest problem is mental health. You know, there could be so many different issues. But in my experience, those kind of projects, I'm not saying massages don't run it, they do. There are lots of massages that do mental health training or workshops or raising awareness or about drugs and everything else, they do. But it is a program. It is almost like an add-on. But I don't see it being led from the pulpit. Now, whether we agree with this or not, the Imam is the leader of the community in that sense. From an Islamic perspective, it's always been there. Now, if I'm not getting the messaging from the khutbah, from the pulpit, that you know what, these are the things, then you know how is it going to change?
Again, deep issue. Sometimes the Imam himself, we've reached such a stage and low that where the Imam sees himself just a leader for the prayers. It doesn't see that leadership that you've kind of like highlighted. The trustees, management committee might not see his position or even the masjid's position in society as a heartbeat. The community themselves might not see that. You know, why are we Muslims getting involved in social issues? Why is the masjid? The masjid is a prayer place. And that's what I'm saying, look, it's a wider problem with the mindset that needs to change. That we as Muslims, our institutions, who are they to serve? We're in society. The masjids are located in the middle of society. There's houses around, people living, Muslims, non-Muslims, youngsters, women. How can we then say, look, we're not going to be part of society. We're not going to take leadership. We're not going to, you know, having add-on programs, but really that's just a kind of like a side issue. Why can't there be a major function of every masjid? You know, so it does need a dialogue and a discussion.
Well, you know, the dialogue and discussion really does need to come about a lot quicker than it is, because it seems the way, you know, say for example, a masajid does have an imam who sees that their role is actually for the community to give some leadership, to bring about the key issues that is affecting them. And the trustees, they actually facilitate this and everything else. But it still seems like, you know, that is not going to be the main thing. You know, the main focus of the mosque is going to be to deal with, you know, so like counselling. I'm sure you're called upon every day by lots of people with lots of different issues, and you're doing that counselling. Now that, I don't know in your centre, but a lot of mosques, they don't have that set up in a professional way, in a way that it makes me or anyone else think that, you know, one of the jobs of this mosque or this building is they offer counselling. You know, how would that change if you know, everyone is facilitating, but the importance isn't still given?
To, let's say, let us, if we can use a term, put the blame on the wider Muslim community in terms of their expectations of an imam, expectations of a trustee, expectations of a function of a masjid. Because yes, I agree in terms of, you know, sometimes some of the trustees, management committee are not really facilitating certain things for the imam or for the community or for the wider non-Muslim community. But the Muslim community who generally fund Muslim institutions and masajid and mosques and so on, what is their mindset? I think that is important in that discussion and dialogue to have. I'll give you an example, like just a local issue. Local issue, we had two non-Muslim gangs. Some young Muslims involved in two gangs, but it reached a peak. That every few weeks somebody's getting stabbed and somebody's being shot and so on. I was able to engage with both sides, leadership from both sides who are non-Muslims, and able, just through engagement, discussion, to kind of like said, look, this has to stop. Somebody got killed many years ago, and you know, retribution and revenge started, and it's just ongoing. Some of the youngsters involved now, I'm telling them, are fighting a cause which they don't really understand. And alhamdulillah, even though they were non-Muslims, one of the leaders took shahada from one of the gangs. The gangs disbanded completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, look, more can be done, but the power, the ability, the respect, the resources need to be laid down for the imams and for the masajid to be able to do this.
So it's a really then the solution, what we're really looking for, seems like, is a holistic one that we need. We need the community to play a role to inform, okay, what are its priorities, and then we need that facilitated and everything else. I mean, we're coming to an end, and you're right, it's a big topic, and there's a lot more to discuss. But the one thing I do want to find out is, like, do you in your centre, like, do a survey or find out, okay, how do you know what is important to your community? I mean, what processes do you have in place to do something like that?
So in terms of engagement with the community, whether it be the youth, whether it be the wider community, so of course we have community meetings where youngsters, sisters, everybody's invited, and they're able to ask questions to the imam, challenge the trustees, ask questions, give advice. That's on a regular basis. But just through engagement projects with the wider community and the Muslim community. So it might be a youth club issue, it might be a community racism event, it might be a knife crime event. You're able to kind of like get feedback, what is needed. And then, plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reason I'm asking is sometimes what I notice is a national issue happens.
Yeah.
And then there is a scurry of kind of events or messages or something, and then you have masajid doing khutbahs on a particular issue. And I always think to myself, well, is that, is it something that happened nationally or in another part of the country? Is that what was needed in your community? What do you know that, what is the important thing in your community? How do you facilitate that?
So I think that's a very important point as well. So sometimes, we have another imam with myself, and usually we do the khutbahs quite on a regular basis. And our worry is sometimes a khatib will come who doesn't understand our need and what's within our community as an issue, and will address something which they're not connected to or don't understand, or it's not relevant. So I think it is important to be aware, but I think, again, going to that point of just engagement. I mean, should an imam not be able to speak to youngsters, be in the masjid?
Do you actually go out yourself into the community to meet people?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the ways you would know what's going on in your local area, I suppose.
We have regular dinners for youth. On a weekly basis, I will take out youngsters, reverts, for dinner. And, we have a discussion on what the needs are. We'll have community meetings. If there's a youth club event, I'm usually part of it. So you get feedback from the community members what is needed. Okay,
all right. Jazakumullah khair. I mean, it is a big topic, and inshallah, I think we will look to discuss it a little bit more in detail. Sorry, dear audience, we have actually run out of time. It is a very, very important thing. I think one of the main thing is, look, it's our masajid, and we have to play a role in it. And I think unless we're proactive, we're just always pushing it onto somebody else. The imam's not doing enough, the trustee's not doing enough, etc. I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing to improve our situation? On that note, Jazakumullah khair for coming, Imam Shakeel Begg, and thank you all for watching. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair.